Let us pray. O Lord, grant us a daily awareness of the precious gift of life which you have given us. As members of this legislative assembly, we dedicate our lives anew to the service of our province and our country. Amen.
Introduction of visitors. Presenting petitions. Reading and receiving petitions. Presenting reports by standing and special committees. Notices of motions. Introduction of bills.
Member for Bow Valley, and followed by...
Request leave to introduce Bill 32, the Irrigation Amendment Act 1990. Mr. Speaker, this bill has three main issues. One of them being that irrigation boards will be allowed to do things other than deliver irrigation water to farmers. There will be an appeal process for irrigation farmers to appeal actions taken through policy by the district boards, and it sets out a voting procedure for elections of board members, allowing only one vote for each parcel.
Mr. Schumacher, please. The Honourable Member for Bow Valley has moved first reading of Bill 32, Irrigation Amendment Act 1990. Those members in favor of first reading, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, please say no. Motion carries. Thank you.
Number 32, Irrigation Amendment Act 1990, introduced by the Honourable Member, Mr. Musgrove, is now read a first time.
Member for Clover Bar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I request leave to introduce a bill, Bill PR 9, Young Men's Christian Association Tax Exemption Amendment Act 1990. This bill removes the tax exemption for certain lands previously owned and used by the YMCA and exempts the lands known as the Jamie Platts Family YMCA as long as the land continues to belong to the YMCA and is used for its purposes.
The Honourable Member for Clover Bar has moved first reading of Bill PR 9, Young Men's Christian Association Tax Exemption Amendment Act 1990. Those in favor of first reading, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, please say no. So ordered.
Bill PR 9, Young Men's Christian Association Tax Exemption Amendment Act 1990, introduced by the Honourable Member, Mr. Gazelle, is now read a first time. Tabling returns and reports.
Honourable members, Deputy Premier.
Mr. Speaker, I move that Bill number 32, Irrigation Amendment Act 1990, be placed on the order paper under Government Bills and Orders.
Those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, please say no. Carried.
Tabling returns and reports.
Minister of Forestry, Lands and Wildlife.
Speaker, I rise to table a document prepared by my department entitled Alberta Forestry, Lands and Wildlife Programs, Activities and Initiatives.
Additional.
Introduction of special guests.
Minister of Public Works, Supply and Services, followed by the Minister of Economic Development and Trade, and then...
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, on behalf of myself and the member of the Legislative Assembly for Stony Plain and the member of the Legislative Assembly for Westlock Sturgeon, I'd like to introduce to you, sir, and to all members of the Legislative Assembly, 45 young people from Muir Lake Community School. Muir Lake Community School is located at the confluence of the border of these three constituencies just a few miles to the west of the city of Edmonton. And the young people are accompanied by two teachers, Mary Brackenbury and Diane Lefebvre, and by four parents, Mrs. Yu, Mrs. Beckwith, Mrs. Book, and Mrs. Van Eck. Mr. Speaker, there comes a point in time in life where sometimes you see life coming back full circle to you. One of the parents with the group today is a former student of mine who was a member of the 1972 Canadian National Reach for the Top championship team, the only time ever in the history of Alberta that a group of academic students from our province ever won a national title. And it's really kind of interesting when you see a former student of yours now be in front of you with a child of her own. and you have the privilege to introduce such a person in the Assembly. And I guess it's a circle of life that keeps flowing right on. But I'd ask these young people, their teachers, and their parents to stand and to receive the warm welcome of all members of the Legislative Assembly. They're in the public.
Economic Development and Trade.
Mr. Speaker, it's my pleasure, sir, to introduce to you and through you a number of students from the Father Cairns School in Sherwood Park. They're joined by teachers Bruce Plant, Melody Kostyuk, and parents Yvette Fortnick and Marlene Kokosh. They're in the members gallery, and I'd ask if they'd rise so that they could receive the warm welcome of the Legislative Assembly.
Edmonton Whiteman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it's my pleasure to introduce to you and through you 31 fine students from the constituency of Whitemud attending St. Stanislaus School. They're accompanied today by two teachers, Mr. Paul Sincere and Miss Jeanette Mazat, and also a parent, Mrs. Huguette Hubert, and a grandparent, Renee Hubert. I would ask, through you, Mr. Speaker, all members of the House, give them the usual warm applause as they stand up in the public gallery and receive recognition.
Edmonton Belmont.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's a pleasure to introduce to you and to all members of the Assembly two guests from Toronto. They're here to see my seatmate, the Honourable Member from Stony Plain. They're seated in the public gallery. I'd ask that Thomas and Taylor Woloshin stand and be recognized by the Assembly.
Ministerial statements. Oral question period.
Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to direct the first question again to the esteemed treasurer, our silver-tongued devil, Magic Johnson, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we're heading into the long weekend, and I certainly don't want the treasurer to go away thinking he's managed to pull a fast one on the state of this province's deficit, Mr. Speaker. We notice that he can now borrow up to $11.5 billion. Mr. Speaker, these great managers of the economy, the Conservative government, $11.5 billion, Mr. Speaker. I can imagine it was another government what they would be saying, Mr. Speaker. But, Mr. Speaker, he has introduced a bill that will add $2 billion to the province's line of credit, but he's still sticking to his line that Alberta's going to have a balanced budget by 1991-92. Mr. Speaker, his arguments are wearing thinner and thinner, Mr. Speaker. Yesterday, the Treasurer insisted that, and I quote, revenues are predictable, Mr. Speaker. Well, let's take a look at the Treasurer's predictions, Mr. Speaker. And my question to the Treasurer is, I want to ask him, how much has he received from the stabilization payments from the federal government up to this point, Mr. Speaker?
Mr. Speaker, I knew the question of stabilization would come around eventually. I flagged it last time the Leader of the Opposition raised it, and he had to change his notes so he wouldn't agree that I knew it was coming. What I can say about stabilization, Mr. Speaker, is that the province of Alberta has made a very substantial claim under the Established Program Financing Act, which would see the province on a very legitimate basis claiming over $550 million because of the oil price collapse which took place in 1986, change in economic circumstances, Mr. Speaker, which no province has ever experienced in the history of Confederation. The legislation is clear, Mr. Speaker, that by December of 1990, a settlement must be effected by the federal government and the province. To date, we have received $75 million as an indication that the federal government has recognized there is an amount due to the province. And at the present time, we're in negotiations with the federal government to secure the best possible amount of money for the province of Alberta, some large amount of money, Mr. Speaker. We have had some difficulty, of course, with the federal government because of the strength of our economy, because we're in very good fiscal shape and financial shape, Mr. Speaker. It's hard for the federal government to, in its own mind, give the money to the province of Alberta. But that hasn't daunted us. This claim is due to the people of this province. It's agreed to and established fiscal arrangements of this province, the heart of the way in which the provinces cooperate on a federation basis, and we're pressing that claim ahead, Mr. Speaker, and I would expect that by the end of this year, as the budget indicates, a very large amount of money will come to this province, probably more than that was in the budget itself.
Mr. Speaker, that'd be interesting. We'll put in the budget a very large amount of money coming in, Mr. Speaker. The point that I make, Mr. Speaker, he probably is not going to get any of it, Mr. Speaker, and now he's putting in his predictions, Mr. Speaker. So there's one of his predictions gone wrong right away, Mr. Speaker. And as pointed out the other day, he didn't even bother to appear before the Commons Committee that's pushing through cuts to our federal transfer payments. That's going to be at least $250 million in the next couple of years, probably more, Mr. Speaker. So there's another prediction out the drain, Mr. Speaker. Maybe you can put a very large amount of money we should have got, Mr. Speaker, in his budget. Now, my question to the Treasurer is this. How can the Treasurer say he's on track with the deficit reduction when his only strategy for meeting projected revenues, Mr. Speaker, is going to court, whining to the federal Tories, and crossing his fingers?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I know that the member from Norwood has never been involved in these kinds of negotiations. And let's hope that never will it happen, because you can see exactly what would happen. These people would cave in at a moment's notice. They would never pursue that which is justly due to the province, as this government will, I can assure you, Mr. Speaker. We'll be after this government, the federal government. We're in the process right now of pursuing our claim. We're well prepared. The time is in our favor, Mr. Speaker, and the dollars are considerable. Now, I think that the member across the way should be supporting us, should be saying, now let's go out and get that money. Let's go and make sure that it comes to the province. I think instead he's saying, why don't you give up and go away? Well, that's not the way we operate, Mr. Speaker. That's not the way this government operates. We're going to press the case. I can assure you I'd be willing to make a wager that that money will come to the province of Alberta. It's due to us. It's due to us under the fiscal arrangements of this country. That's what ties these provinces together, and it's going to come to us, Mr. Speaker. It's a question of time. A large amount of money, important to our fiscal plan.
Thank you. Thank you. Supplementary, final.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the Treasurer is right. We wouldn't manage things the way he does. We wouldn't put down a large amount of money coming in, Mr. Speaker, and put it in our books. And, Mr. Speaker, it's an interesting prediction that the Treasurer has made. I hope he's going to be better than he has in his budget projections in the past, Mr. Speaker. But, Mr. Speaker, my question to the Treasurer is this. There's simply no way that your budgetary deficit is going to be $780 million. Not with the GST, the federal high interest rate policy, unstable oil prices, federal transfer payment cuts, and over $300 million in stabilization payments that are anything but predictable. And my question, straightforward to the Treasurer, is this. I want the Treasurer finally to come clean and give us the straight goods. What's the real story on the financial mess that you've created for this province?
Right. Wow. Mr. Speaker, I guess I have to give a bit of a picture about the financial strength of this province. The member has asked for it. I guess I have no recourse but to explain what in fact is happening. We've already heard, Mr. Speaker, that the strength of this province is clear. The economic growth is probably as good as any province in Canada. We came out of the recession of 1986 with a remarkable rebound. The growth in 1988 and 89 is very high. Real growth is very strong in this province, driven by the confidence that the private sector has and by the dollars that the Albertans have in their own hands, Mr. Speaker. They have disposable income. They're spending it. Investment is taking place here, Mr. Speaker, and as my colleagues have pointed out yesterday, unemployment is working in our favor. Now, I said second unemployment yesterday, Mr. Speaker. It's third by one small percentage point, and that's merely a statistical aberration. We're as good as any in terms of our unemployment, and it's moving in the right direction, Mr. Speaker. Moreover, Mr. Speaker, the strength of this province is clear. The only province in Canada with more assets and liabilities. The Heritage Fund is working in our favor, generating over $1.3 billion to us, far above the cost of borrowing, Mr. Speaker. And anyone knows, in terms of the way you manage your economy, manage your fiscal regime, fiscal plan, that you have to have a plan. Now, if you look at the information that we provided going back to 1986, we're one of the few governments in this province, in this country, who said we have a problem today, and by 91, 92, we'll have a balanced budget. Now, you look at the graphs that we gave, Mr. Speaker, we're on.
Thank you. Second main question, Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the plan is spend, 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 and borrow, 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 Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to direct the next set of questions to the Premier, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I have in front of me the report of the Special Committee to study the proposed companion resolution to the Meech Lake Accord from the House of Commons Committee, Mr. Speaker, and I think by and large they've done a pretty good job, Mr. Speaker, and some of the amendments that we tried to bring in the debate are in this particular report, Mr. Speaker. And I think the Premier would agree there's some encouraging signs flowing from this exercise and some discouraging ones. Encouraging ones, it seems to at least got some of the dissenting provinces at least seems to be on board, but of course Quebec still seems unwilling, at least the initial reports, unwilling to compromise. Mr. Speaker, I think the Premier agrees that the majority of Canadians, including the majority of Quebecers, want to see an end to this Meech Lake process, and they want one that will end up with a strong and united Canada. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to look at some of the particular recommendations here with the Premier, though. And will the Premier tell the House, whether having had time to review the parliamentary committee's report, whether he is prepared to accept some of the recommendations, such as, one specifically, the suggestion that there be regular conferences on Aboriginal rights?
Mr. Speaker, I don't, first of all, I agree with the lead-in to the Honourable Leader of the Opposition's comments before his question, that there are some hopeful signs here, and there seem to be some movement that would allow provinces who do not support the Accord to perhaps be able to work to close the gap. However, I think it would be extremely unwise, and certainly not something I'm going to do today, to pick and choose one or other of the recommendations and say we're for that one, we're not for that one. I don't think that's the way in which these discussions can be conducted. Because, first of all, this is the House of Commons Committee report. There's nothing complete about it in terms of whether it's the only things that will be discussed in the First Minister's Conference, assuming we have a First Minister's Conference. There is the Manitoba desires, Premier Wells' desires, and New Brunswick's desires. And so, while I would only say to the Leader of the Opposition that yes, this does appear to have some capacity to move into the middle ground if we're going to be able to reach any closing of the gap on constitutional reform. But I certainly can't pick out any individual one and say we endorse that or don't.
Mr. Speaker, I think we would all agree that at this time is somewhat of the essence. The Premier has talked about this himself, and I think the key is for all people at this time in our history of our country to be somewhat flexible, Mr. Speaker, and it seems to me that this is going to be at least a starting point for discussion if there is a First Minister's Conference, and I'll come to that, Mr. Speaker. I appreciate that you don't want to go through. I'm trying to get a general impression if there's some flexibility on the Premier's part in terms of Aboriginal rights. And the other one, Mr. Speaker, if he can, without trying to negotiate here, to give us some indication how he feels about northern residents, their recommendation that they be allowed to have people appointed to the Supreme Court of Canada and the Senate, and with the suggestion that for new provinces to get away from the unanimity, that the federal government, along with the affected territories, have that right to form new territories.
Well, I understand what the Leader of the Opposition is trying to do, because there are certain areas that it appears that there may be consensus in Canada that in a second round it could be dealt with, or in some parallel accord could be dealt with. But again, I tell him that I'm not going to pick and choose and comment on various ones at this stage. There is a potential for a First Minister's meeting within days, and it wouldn't be wise to, as a matter of fact, it's the biggest mistake I think First Ministers can make, is to start saying, this is one we're going to have, this is one we're going to have, and not be prepared to be flexible and negotiate.
Mr. Speaker, I'm well aware that you have to go in, if there is a First Minister's Conference, with some flexibility in points, but I think it's important that the Premier, being our representative from this province, that we have some idea how he feels about the report and some of the recommendations, Mr. Speaker. It's very hard for us to know what stand he's going to take, and by that time it may be too late. But, Mr. Speaker, my question then is to the Premier in terms of the process, and maybe you would comment on that. It seems that one of the strong recommendations that they're making is that, and the Premier's talked about this himself, that there has to be a First Minister's Conference, probably at the latest next week. Mr. Speaker, my question to the Premier is, what is the Premier doing to ensure then that a First Minister's Conference is held as soon as possible so that this impasse might possibly be resolved?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I've told the Prime Minister and other premiers over the last several days. I've talked to, I guess, 7, perhaps, premiers and the Prime Minister. I'll be talking within an hour to, if possible, to Senator Murray to express my belief that we should have a First Minister's meeting. We should have it as quickly as possible. It's obvious to me that with the Manitoba process, which requires approximately a month to get through their legislature, and we're aiming at June 23rd. Obviously, we're here now on May the 18th. There isn't a lot of time in order for us to have a meeting and have some agreement that will allow Manitoba to start their process. I do understand the Leader of the Opposition's point, though, that he would like to know as much as possible about this, and I think that's a legitimate point of view. I don't know if there is a First Minister's meeting or some other type of get-together, but I would certainly give consideration that if we are going to some type of a full-scale First Minister's meeting, that perhaps the Leader of the Opposition and perhaps the Leader of the Liberal Party might come to that meeting. They certainly wouldn't be in the meeting in a negotiating position, but they might well be observers and be able to have discussions with myself or the Minister of Federal and Intergovernmental Affairs and perhaps other people at that meeting. No decision's been made on that, but I've been thinking of the pressure of time and that we may well want to be moving something through this legislature as well. So that's just an idea that has been, I've been considering, and it may be able to help both sides of the House in dealing with something that is so important as the unity of our country.
Edmonton Glengarry, Leader of the Liberals.
Mr. Speaker, might I say at the outset that because so much is at stake with Canada, Meech Lake, the companion accord, that I welcome the suggestion that the Honourable Premier has made. I'd be delighted to attend and to give whatever assistance that I could. Mr. Speaker, it's now the 3rd week that Albertans see social workers on strike. The 2nd week that jail guards are on strike. Day after day, we've asked the government to enter into negotiations to have the Premier or the Minister responsible for Social Services or the Minister of Labour engage social workers and the jail guards in meaningful discussion. And day after day, we were told that that couldn't be done as long as people were in the streets. Well, surprise, 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 we've learned that secret discussions have been taking place, and I congratulate the Minister responsible for Social Services in that regard. And the nicest surprise is that the reports show or seem to suggest that progress is being made. It seems to be, Mr. Speaker, that the issue of this turmoil has to be broadened. And learning from the error of one's ways, I would like to ask the Premier whether he's prepared to dispatch the Minister responsible for the jail guards to deal personally with those jail guards, because I think we can solve that one as we appear to be solving the other one.
Mr. Speaker, and perhaps the Minister of Labour will want to add to my comments. I don't want the Leader of the Liberal Party to in any way believe that there have been collective bargaining negotiations going on or any kind of contract negotiations going on. That is not happening. And that will not happen until the employees return to work. And so don't be misled by any reports to that extent. We will not negotiate the collective bargaining. We will not negotiate any contracts while the employees are out of work and breaking the law. Now, there are discussions going on about the conditions of returning to work, and I would ask the Minister of Labour to comment on that.
Mr. Speaker, let me confirm and underscore exactly what is being said here. Contract negotiations are not occurring and will not occur until the social workers or anyone else who is on an illegal strike goes back to work. The issues in dispute here are pay, wage parity, and caseloads, and those have not been discussed. They are not under negotiation. But as this government has said from the beginning, we are eager to get back to the table to negotiate those items because it's at the negotiating table where they will be settled. A precondition, however, is for illegal strikers to go back to work. What we are therefore exploring at the moment is a back-to-work agreement to get them back to the table so that those negotiations can occur. They were discussions. They went on for 23 hours. It was not completely resolved, but there is some possibility that we will be making progress, and our first objective will be met, and that is to have the social workers back to work.
With the jail guards, though.
I'm sorry. Mr. Speaker, on a number of occasions I've asked and suggested that the Premier or ministers comfort the striking public employees by engaging them in dialogue, saying that things can be resolved. And I think we have moved in that direction to a great extent. I'm wondering, Mr. Premier, whether the Premier would be prepared to comfort social workers even more, to a greater extent, by saying now that no punitive action will take place against these social workers at all. This is moving along nicely, and that's the last sign they need.
No, Mr. Speaker, it's impossible to make that kind of a comment. I can't do that. I don't know how the social workers are going to conduct themselves, but I say this to them, that I care about them, and I believe we can help them. But they are taking a course of action now that prevents me from helping them, and there is one course of action that they should follow, and that is to return to work. And then we can get into the process of working together. But there can be no negotiations and no guarantees while they are still breaking the law.
Mr. Speaker, given that we are making progress because discussions are taking place, but given the fact that we've gone through a strike in 1988 with nurses and now a social workers strike and now a strike involving jail guards, would the Premier be prepared to admit that there is something wrong with the labor legislation in this province and set up a special task force of Albertans from the Chamber of Commerce, from labor organizations that will review, not to travel the world, to keep this problem at home, to look, Mr. Speaker, to look at the problems to ensure that we don't have continued strife because of this very unfortunate legislation.
Mr. Speaker, I just draw to the attention of the leader of the Liberal Party that a huge percentage, some 99% of all labor management negotiations are conducted within the Alberta labor legislation in a very successful manner. The parties get together under good legislation and reach agreements, as they should. That's what happens in Alberta. And it is better than it happens in other provinces. So why would we now start to dismantle a system that is working? Now, if the honorable leader of the Liberal Party wants to present something in this legislature for consideration, he has the right to do that, and it would be given consideration. But why would we change something that this House endorsed just a year or so ago and is working so well?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, my question today is to the Minister of Career Development and Employment. Mr. Speaker, the Student Temporary Employment Program has over the last few years given much needed summer employment to students and has proven to be a helpful training ground as well as providing financial assistance to many villages, towns, municipal districts, and local associations in my constituency of Highwood, and I dare say in other constituencies as well. It helps to employ young people in useful community work. My question then to the Minister of Career Development and Employment is, how many students will be employed in the STEP program this year compared to last year?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I appreciate the opportunity to respond to the honourable member for Highwood, and certainly appreciate his remarks as it refers to the program. But I'd like to indicate and emphasize, Mr. Speaker, that the main emphasis of the department does not create jobs, but does provide assistance along with career training and development wherever possible, and that is the main objective of it. In particular, STEP, or the Summer Temporary Employment Program, is one of those programs that does provide assistance to the people entering the labor market for the first time in many cases. The 1990 budget this year has been allocated at some $20 million. That compares very favorable with last year's budget of some $22.5 million, and with the decrease in the unemployment stats, we felt it was more than adequate, and certainly is proving to be so. Well, the requests for exceed the number of dollars that will be committed. It doesn't mean that all jobs won't be funded, because on many cases they fall through the cracks and that they're not completing the program or they're not necessary. Our main emphasis will be on career training, and while there be two sides of it, the career and labor side of it, there will be approximately, to our best guesstimate at this time, some 7,900 positions taken up, and that relates very favorable with the 8,000, 8,100 of the year previously.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Mr. Speaker, my supplementary question is again to the Minister of Career Development and Employment. Have all the communities and associations in Highwood been notified as to their STEP allocation for 1990, and how does this allocation compare to last year?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I'd be surprised if they've all not been advised by this time, because, of course, the deadline has come and gone. Well, all might not have received their number of requests. That was because the decisions that had to be made, and I can assure the honourable member and all honourable members that those were made on a fair and equitable basis. As I once again emphasized, that it was on the career side rather than on a more mundane, say, lawnmower exercise where a request may come in from a municipality for 20-some jobs. We would have to look and say, how do those relate to career-orientated? But there were some 330 of the 372 municipalities have been provided funding of some $4 million in the program, and that relates to approximately 1,100 plus positions.
Edmonton Jasper Place, followed by Westlock Sturgeon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Minister of Energy was perhaps a little too quick and a little too aggressive in his reaction when his earlier comments on environmental impact assessments were referred to in the House yesterday. Now that the Minister has assumed de facto responsibility for the environment, obviously his views on these matters are much more important to Albertans. The Environment Department is now under soft receivership. The appeal court decision ruled that Alberta's current environmental impact assessment is deficient in not providing for independent scientific review by qualified expertise and failing to guarantee public hearings. Albertans need to know now whether the de facto Environment Minister has decided that project panels set up under this proposed legislation will be staffed with fully qualified independent scientific expertise. Will they?
Mr. Speaker, to answer the first part of his comment, we on this side of the House also assume responsibility for the environment. With regard to his question, he may want to ask the Minister of the Environment.
This is the Minister who is bringing this legislation before the Assembly, and this is the legislation under which these projects are dealt with. Let me give you, for instance, ALPAC's latest proposal makes extravagant claims about reduction of toxic organic chloride pollution based on unproven new bleaching process. I think it's obvious to everyone, except perhaps this government, that such claims must be evaluated by competent people who are independent of the sponsoring government and the project proponent. And in view of this memo, which we dealt with in the House last week, in which the idea of expert panels was attacked by the province's Director of Natural Resources Policy, Albertans want to know, when they go to this board, are they going to face a pool of Tory hacks rather than strong, independent, scientific people? Which will it be?
You'll have to wait for the legislation to be presented to this House, Mr. Speaker.
Westlock Sturgeon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question today is to the Premier and Deputy Premier. Mr. Speaker, all members in the legislature know as Native Awareness Week is drawn to the close, and one of the major problems we have, Mr. Speaker, is still to resolve is down or in the Pagan area, in the area of the Oldland Dam. Treaty number 7 in the 1800s, Mr. Speaker, plus Supreme Court decisions both in Canada and the U.S. would give the indication that the Indians have a strong claim to the water rights. And I know the provincial government has argued otherwise, but also environmental studies have shown that any river immediately downstream from a dam is tremendously affected as to trees, fisheries, and cover wildlife, all very, very much closer to the Pagan style of life than might be in the normal non-native community. My first question then to the Premier or the Deputy Premier is, could they update the House as to the state of negotiations between the Pagans and the Alberta government as to compensation for the water that's being used and how much water the Pagans will get to use for their own irrigation purposes?
Speaker, advise the House that the matter is presently in the courts, and I think we'd have sub judice without any doubt in this matter.
Mr. Speaker, I was afraid of that. Going to the courts is a cop-out. These are the type of things that should be negotiated out.
Member, order, please. Take your place, please. It's been pointed out on numerous occasions in the House, sub judice convention is a rule of this House. It's not a cop-out, so please, the supplementary, without the comment.
Mr. Speaker, then to attack it from another angle, because of the federal implications and the environmental impacts immediately downstream from the dam, has this government had any approaches made from the federal Minister of Environment as to environmental studies or environmental hearings, particularly apropos as it is to do with the Pagans immediately downstream from the dam? Has Bouchard contacted you?
Mr. Speaker, all I can advise again is that there has been untold meetings and consultations with the band in this matter, and in fact a great deal of money has been paid to the band to conduct studies pursuant to water below. If he has any specifics he'd wish, the Minister of Environment in communication with Mr. Bouchard, I'm sure that we could accept those and have them answered by the Minister when he's back.
Thank you. Calgary-Glenmore.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Recently in this Assembly, I brought to your attention the problems regarding the Glenmore Dam in the Calgary-Glenmore constituency. This is the City of Calgary's main water supply and reservoir, Mr. Speaker. And recently I've met with the commissioners, and they've indicated that this dam is structurally unsound. Now I'd like to ask the Minister of Public Works, Supply Services and Public Safety to indicate to the Assembly whether or not his department is working with the City of Calgary with regards to the safety for the public and whether or not this dam is in fact structurally sound.
Mr. Speaker, several years ago in 1988, the government of Alberta introduced new requirements for emergency response plans for all critical dams in the province of Alberta. And we did that, I did that in my capacity as Minister responsible for Alberta Public Safety Services. And we also identified that one of the critical dams in the province of Alberta was the Glenmore Dam, which is owned by the City of Calgary and located within the City of Calgary. Since that time, the last couple of years, an emergency response plan has been developed in consultations between the Government of Alberta and the City of Calgary, and that plan is now before the Council of the City of Calgary waiting their approval. At the same time, a private sector consulting firm was also hired to do a dam safety evaluation, And such a report was filed with the City of Calgary, and that report recommended that 3 improvements must be made to the Glenmore Dam. One, that there had to be improvements to the spillway, there had to be improvements to the downstream channel, and there also had to be improvements to the dike. And since 1988, improvements have been made to the first 2 of these subject matters, the spillway and the downstream channel, and improvements are planned to be made to the dike. The standard that's being asked for, requested of the City of Calgary, and to ensure safety of all individuals living downstream of the Glenmore Dam is a standard of 1 in 800.
Mr. Speaker, could the minister outline when these procedures will be taking place and how long it would take before this dam would be completed and structurally sound?
Mr. Speaker, to repeat, the dam is owned by the City of Calgary, and that's a decision that the duly elected council and the City of Calgary must make. But it's my understanding that work has already progressed in 2 sides of it, and work has to continue, presumably in 1990, with respect to the dike. Safety concern is always high magnitude, and we've had revised, updated criteria with respect to emergency response plans on all critical dams in our province. We introduced them in 1988, and we're following through with them now, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Stony Plain.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, throughout my questioning, the Solicitor General has had a very, very difficult time understanding a very simple concept. That is that it's an unwarranted invasion of a citizen's privacy for the province to retain personal physical information about that citizen after he or she has been acquitted. In fact, Mr. Speaker, on Wednesday, the Solicitor General made the shocking assertion that an individual acquitted of an offense is somehow less innocent than he was before he was charged. Given that in this country there are only 2 possible verdicts, guilty or innocent, and given that the Solicitor General's departments treats those who have been found innocent by a court of law differently than those who have never been charged at all, can the Solicitor General explain how many types of innocence he thinks exist in Alberta?
Mr. Speaker, the findings of any court in a trial, in fact, are guilty and not guilty.
Mr. Speaker, the Identification of Criminals Act compels only those charged with an indictable offense to be fingerprinted. Yet the police practice in this province is to have those charged with hybrid offenses, which are less serious than indictable ones, attend for identification before their first appearance, resulting in the unnecessary fingerprinting of many individuals. Given that the simple solution to this practice is merely to change the policy, the police policy, so that the date for identification is set after the first appearance, would the Solicitor General agree to effect this change to ensure that individuals charged with hybrid offenses are not unnecessarily fingerprinted?
I believe, Mr. Speaker, that the House would best be served if I took that question on advice and actually researched that particular act myself, or had it researched.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the white paper on daycare reforms continues to cause great anxiety for Albertans. Our offices, our constituency offices, are besieged by parents, operators, workers, childcare students, and employers with unanswered questions. Unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, as MLAs, we have no new information to pass on, especially with regard to the subsidy schedule. Mr. Speaker, now department staff tell me that the government hasn't developed the new rate schedule, and worse, that it has no idea how many parents are going to be eligible for how much. Mr. Speaker, that seems to me to be shameful. The government has asked us to buy into this scheme on vague details and the rhetoric of trust us. I want to ask the Minister of Family and Social Services, does the minister have a new rate schedule for daycare subsidy? Yes or no?
Mr. Speaker, we've just gone through a very exhaustive consultative process with Albertans. I'm really pleased with the response that I've had on the white paper. I'm really pleased with the opportunities that I've had to meet with many daycare advocacy groups, parents of children in daycare operators, and I can say that as a result of this process that yes, we'll have final schedules and final recommendations that we'll be able to share with the Albertans in a very short time period.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I think the minister recognizes that nobody can move, nobody can make plans until we have that in our hands. My second question to the minister, Mr. Speaker, is why have all the committees established to work on the reform been placed on hold? These are accreditation, regulation, training, certification, and equivalency. They appear to have been placed on hold, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, I'm not aware of any committees being placed on hold. We're progressing very quickly and very effectively at, again, making sure that we continue to have the best daycare programs and the best daycare systems in the country. And I'm looking forward to releasing our final recommendations as a result of this process. Again, Mr. Speaker, I'd want to say that it has worked extremely well, and I really appreciate the participation of Albertans. I really appreciate the number of parents that have taken the time to write to me personally, and I can assure the member that I have taken the time to read all of their letters as well, and I would tell the member that it's some 1,500 letters that I've gone through, and as I say, it's been helpful, it's been a good process, it's the kind of process that this government likes to utilize. We recognize that it's important to work with Albertans in addressing these very important issues, and we're going to continue to do that. And as I say, Mr. Speaker, we'll be releasing some recommendations and some final conclusions that Albertans can all say, we are a part of it and we participated, and that's the way the system should work.
Edmonton Mill Woods.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My questions are to the Minister of Education today. He will know, of course, that the Edmonton Public School Board has now submitted its 1991 capital priority list to the government for facilities to meet the educational needs of students in the newly developing areas of the city. This list, at the top of the list, includes 3 very badly needed new junior high schools, the Wineloss Junior High School, Haresine Junior High, and Lorelei Junior High. I'd like to ask the Minister today if he can make a commitment to ensure that the necessary financial support from the province will be forthcoming to ensure that the school board can meet its target of having these 3 urgently needed new junior high schools open by September of 1992.
Mr. Speaker, I appreciate the representation from the member for Mill Woods, as I appreciate the representations from all of my colleagues, to ensure that we as a government continue to support quality education in this province, and that we continue to support the construction of new schools and the modernization of old schools where it's necessary. This province, this government, Mr. Speaker, has committed some $1.2 billion to that capital construction over the last decade, and I am convinced, Mr. Speaker, that that significant contribution by Alberta taxpayers will continue in the 1990s.
Mr. Speaker, the parents and children in Mill Woods and these other communities have been patient. They've been waiting for several years now, and they would like a commitment from the province now. And I want to ask the minister now, can he give some concrete backing to his government's rhetoric about how education is the #1 priority, and give a commitment that this funding for those schools will be approved without delay?
Mr. Speaker, as I said earlier, I'm proud of this government's contribution to the cost to the construction of those new schools. A significant number of new schools, I believe some 1/2 new schools in the honourable member's constituency over the last 6 or 7 years. So, Mr. Speaker, this government has gone some considerable distance in meeting the needs of the residents, not just of Mill Woods, but the needs of students and our children throughout this province over the last decade.
Edmonton Whiteman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the recent death of another Dyaishowa pulp mill worker emphasizes the need to ensure safety regulations are being enforced. This is the second worker in 3 months to be killed on that site. Now, I understand the production in the wood room has been shut down, but that's only a temporary solution. Mr. Speaker, I feel that we got to address from a long-term point of view occupational safety in this province. And my question, Mr. Speaker, to the Premier, can the Premier respond to the comment made by Joe Miller, Director of Communication in the Department of Occupational Safety, where he stated it is doubtful that the worker killed Wednesday went through the safety program because the sessions were for construction workers and did not involve the production workers. Now, Mr. Speaker, can the Premier respond to that and give us some assurances that these regulations, these safety regulations, are going to be beefed up to protect the workers of Alberta?
Speaker, as the Acting Minister of Occupational Health and Safety, I'd be happy to take that question as notice.
Mr. Speaker, to the Minister that is prepared to take the questions under notice, and possibly he could comment on this to some degree. There has been discussions, and the Minister responding would be aware of those discussions, and those discussions involve the Alberta Trades Council, where they have requested the establishment of a safety committee with the power to shut down a company if it's dangerous to the worker. Mr. Speaker, can the Minister give us some assurances that this joint committee will in fact be put into place?
Mr. Speaker, again, I'd be happy to take that as notice.
Vegreville.
Mr. Speaker, earlier this year, the Premier and several of his colleagues in the Cabinet and backbenches of the Conservative Party went up to Sexsmith, Alberta, to introduce a farm aid program for the farmers in the Peace River country who weren't able to harvest their crops, and for those who did damage their fields substantially. Now, it was a great photo opportunity, a lot of glitz and glamour to the announcements, but unfortunately there hasn't been much in the way of substance or meaningful assistance to the farmers that need it, Mr. Speaker. People found they had to wait for up to 2 days in line to make application for the program, and they're finding now that the people who are out there trying to administer the program are being unnecessarily stingy with their interpretation of the guidelines, and they suspect that it's got something to do with the fact that the $14.9 million committed to the program won't nearly begin to cover the claims that are coming in from perhaps as many as twice as many farmers that they anticipated would apply. My question to the Premier is, recognizing that each dollar that they put into this program will likely be matched by the federal government through their farm aid program, will the Premier agree to commit the necessary number of dollars to cover the full cost of the claims by all of the farmers in the Peace River country and instruct the inspectors to be generous in their interpretations?
Mr. Speaker, when the Minister of Agriculture returns to the House, he may want to deal with this matter, but currently this matter is under the administration of the Minister of Public Works, Supply and Services, and I ask him to respond.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the introduction by the member from Vegreville is one of the most untrue introductions that I've ever run across in 15 years in this Assembly, Mr. Speaker. Over 3,000 applications from individuals in northwestern Alberta have been dealt with. Mr. Speaker, some 2,000 letters and checks have gone out, Mr. Speaker, and as I stand here today, Mr. Speaker, I have not received one negative letter from anyone impacted by the announcement of this government with respect to the very generous disaster assistance program that the Premier announced in Sexsmith several months ago. And Mr. Speaker, that is a fact.
If he hasn't had one, Mr. Speaker, perhaps he's had many. And the Minister of Agriculture certainly has got letters to that effect. But in terms of the application of the program, Mr. Speaker, there is a part of the program that will pay people for rut damage to fields if the ruts are 6 inches deep or deeper, not if they're 5 3/4 inches or 5 inches or anything like that. And I'd like to ask the Minister of Public Works, Supply and Services why the government has made it necessary for anybody who's eligible to receive assistance under that portion of the program, made it compulsory for them to apply for and pay for crop insurance for a total of 2 years, meaning that they're going to have to give the government more than twice as much as they're likely to receive through the program.
Mr. Speaker, let's be clear about one thing. Disaster assistance that's provided in the province of Alberta is a response to individuals who have been impacted by events beyond their control. And also, Mr. Speaker, for situations that are non-insurable. In other words, hardly would it be fair to ask the taxpayer of Alberta to provide assistance to an individual for a decision that he or she may have made not to purchase insurance if insurance is readily available. We have in this province of Alberta a hail and crop insurance corporation that's funded in essence jointly by the federal government, the provincial government, and the participants who are in it. If an individual chooses not to purchase an easily accessible program, Mr. Speaker, and then chooses to make an argument to the taxpayer of Alberta that he or she should receive a subsidy payment for a decision that they've made, that would hardly be fair, Mr. Speaker. And, Mr. Speaker, we have to protect this purse on behalf of the taxpayer of Alberta, Mr. Speaker. We're doing that as a government.
Might we have unanimous consent to revert to the introduction of special guests? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Attorney General.
Mr. Speaker, it's my pleasure to introduce to you and through you to the members of the Assembly 25 students from the Cornerstone Christian School, Camrose, and they're seated in the members' gallery. They're accompanied by teachers Monica Rode and Tim Downey, and with the parent, Mrs. Zook. I would ask that they all arise and receive the usual warm welcome of the Assembly.
Tourism, followed by economic development and trade.
Mr. Speaker, it is a pleasure to introduce to you and through you to the members of the Legislative Assembly a school group from my constituency. We have with us 42 grade 5 and grade 6 students from Pipestone Elementary School in Millet, and they are accompanied by their teachers, Mrs. Benke and Mr. Siepert, and several parents. As they rise, I would ask that the members join with me giving the students a warm welcome.
Economic development and trade.
Mr. Speaker, it's my pleasure, sir, to introduce to you and to members of the Legislative Assembly a group of 41 students from the St. Teresa School in Sherwood Park. They're joined by teachers Connie Pushman and Mary Hornby. They were to be in the AV room, but I understand the visitor services did find room for them in the public gallery, and I would ask them to rise and receive the warm welcome of the Legislative Assembly.
Minister of Education, followed by Vegreville.
Mr. Speaker, it's a pleasure today to introduce a number of students from the number of schools throughout the county of Parkland. They are here visiting the member for Stony Plain and me. They came at an invitation that I gave to them when I visited Katiskana School during Education Week, Mr. Speaker, and I had the good fortune to see an incredible array of talent. It's a series, a display of art that I've never seen children put together in a school system ever before in my days in this job. And I proud to note, too, Mr. Speaker, that the member for Stony Plain was a former principal of this school. They are here today, some 10 students, to make a presentation to the member and to me to display some of that art in our office over the next 6 months.
A good idea.
They're joined by their teacher and the organizer for this, Mrs. Marilyn Doig, and 4 parents. I'd ask them to all rise in the members' gallery and ask all members here to give them the cordial welcome of the Assembly.
Vegreville.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's my pleasure to introduce to you and to members of the Assembly today 30 grade 5 and 6 students from the Tofield School in Tofield. They're seated in the public gallery accompanied by their teachers Sam Wheeler, Jean Comanche, Penny Wood, and Sandra Norton. I'll have a chance to meet with them very shortly and have pictures taken, and I'd like to ask them to rise in the public gallery and receive the warm welcome of members of the Assembly.
32. Last evening, the member for Edmonton Highlands raised a point of order on remarks made by the Premier in question period yesterday. The member cited Standing Order 23, subsection I, and Beauchesne 484, subsection 3. These authorities deal with imputing false or unavowed motives to a member. One of the comments complained of refers to the, quote, NDP, close the quote, not to an individual member, nor did it identify the New Democrat caucus. The other comment complained of was indeed imputed to the member for Edmonton Highlands, that which related to breaking the law. However, the reference appears to be to statements made outside the House, and the chair cannot rule on whether this does impute motives which are false or unavowed, as the statements do not form part of the record of this House. This is essentially a dispute as to facts between two members as to what is the essence of the member for Edmonton Highlands' position on breaking the law. It is not a point of order. Beauchesne 494 applies, which is, quote, it has been formally ruled by speakers that statements by members respecting themselves and particularly within their own knowledge must be accepted. It is not unparliamentary temperately to criticize statements made by members as being contrary to the facts. But no imputation of intentional falsehood is permissible. On rare occasions, this may result in the House having to accept two contradictory accounts of the same incident. The chair has also received with proper notice a question of privilege, and since it involves the temporary occupant of the chair then absents himself from the House so that the matter may be dealt with by the Deputy Speaker.
The honourable member for Edmonton Mill Woods has given notice of a question of privilege. The chair would now recognize the honourable member for Mill Woods.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It was my contention that my rights as a member of this assembly were breached yesterday when the Speaker refused to recognize me in question period when he was aware of the intention I had to ask questions during question period to the Premier regarding recent fatality at Daishawa. My rights were also breached by the fact that I was not notified that I had been barred from question period for nearly a week, even though I had been subject to that disciplinary sanction during that time. Finally, my rights were breached when I was told to withdraw remarks the Speaker ruled last week did not need to be withdrawn or be subject to barring from question period indefinitely. Mr. Speaker, changes to laws in parliamentary democracies are not made in secret and sprung on the public after the fact. The public is entitled to due notice, and this is why legislation receives 3 readings before enactment. The same thing applies to institutions. For example, a prison warden could not withhold bread and water from a prisoner because the warden decided after the fact that he didn't like the utterance of a prisoner from the week before. This is all the more true if the warden told the prisoner upon hearing the utterance that while he didn't like that utterance, he would not punish the prisoner for the utterance. Due process is the cornerstone of law in a democracy, and this is the case for both civil and criminal law. Neither Parliament nor the court has the right to enact or uphold a law, and then subsequently and without notice, silently punish one who did not violate the law, and then a week later declare arbitrarily that I have changed my mind, I have changed the law or rule of law, and your behavior is subject to retroactivity, whether or not I bothered to tell you or put my decision through any due process. The same basic rule of fairness must apply to members of this assembly. This is so evident that there are no standing orders or Beauchesne or Erskine-May references to state that the Speaker must inform a member if the Speaker changes his mind on a ruling. This is all the more true if the Speaker chooses to punish a member without telling him that the ruling has changed or that he is being punished, in fact. Fairness of law, Mr. Speaker, dictates that the violator must be told that he has committed a crime before he can be charged with it or punished for it if found guilty of that charge. I was told on May the 9th, 1990, that the Speaker would not insist upon a retraction of utterances I made on the 8th of May. That was the Speaker's ruling. I remind the Speaker of a vitally important Beauchesne citation which applies well to this context, and that is Beauchesne 189, which reads as follows: a very important function of those persons in the chair, either in the House or in committees, is the maintenance of order. In doing so, those who preside must be mindful of the rights of members to speak freely. and the equally important right of the House to be free from obstruction and grave disorder. There's no question that the Speaker has the right to rule on points of order, to maintain decorum in the House, and to name or expel for one day those who disregard the authority of the Chair. There's no question that the Speaker has the right to not hear a member by way of punishment for a noted violation of the rules or disregarding the Chair. There is also no question, certainly, that a member has a basic and fundamental right to be told if the Speaker has changed his mind on a ruling. And there must be no question, of course, as well, that a member in the House has a basic right to be advised of that change of mind at the earliest possible opportunity. And there is no question at all that a member must be informed if he is being punished for a violation he was previously told he would not be punished for. None of these conditions were met when the Speaker advised the Assembly and me yesterday that I have, without my knowledge, been barred from question period for the past week for not withdrawing remarks that I had been told by the Speaker last week that I did not have to withdraw. Mr. Speaker, I contend that my basic privileges as a member of this Assembly have been breached in all regards, and so in effect have the rights of all my constituents who I am elected to represent. I ask that you find a prima facie case of privilege in this matter.
The Honourable Member for Edmonton-Menolark.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's with a good deal of trepidation, of course, that each of us in this legislature confront an issue of a breach of privilege that affects and relates to the conduct, or alleges to affect and relate to the conduct of the Speaker. And I certainly share that trepidation as I rise to represent my caucus's concerns and interests in this matter. All of us know that the Speaker's role in supervising this sometimes emotional and always intense place is extremely difficult. It is not simply a matter of arbitration between and amongst dispassionate debate upon technical matters. It is all too often arbitration between passionate and emotional positions on extremely heartfelt issues. We do see this Speaker exercise grace, discretion, good judgment, and good humor in the conduct of this very difficult task. Most of us, in fact, have encountered a kind word and a sympathetic ear over some difficult issue or some personal circumstance from this Speaker. However, denying a member of this legislature the right to speak in this legislature under circumstances that have now been drawn into question by the member raising this matter of privilege, if proven, can only be the most serious of breaches of privilege. It would reflect, this particular incident, if proven, reflects certain themes in the Speaker's manner which we believe have emerged from time to time and which are disturbing to us because they can be disruptive to the unimpeded democratic functioning of this legislature. Inherent in this particular incident, if proven, is a certain arbitrariness and inconsistency in the exercise of rules which we have seen in other instances, we believe, as well. We have known, in addition, the Speaker to be provocative at times in the way he enters debate and to have indulged in political activity in at least one case outside the House, which is inconsistent with O'Shane 164. Mr. Speaker, this question of privilege, we believe, because it is an incident which is, of course, isolated and limited in one sense to the matter raised by this member, but also because it reflects perhaps broader themes which are of concern to us, must be aired fairly. Our position in the Liberal caucus is that it should be referred to the Standing Committee on Privileges and Elections immediately, where it can receive open and fair debate. We believe, Mr. Speaker, to do anything else, to take any other action, is to risk debasing and eroding the ability of this legislature to operate properly, to operate in the way that it is designed to operate. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, this is a matter of which really is between the Speaker and a member of the legislature who has raised the point of privilege to a very large extent with respect to a particular set of circumstances. I only rise because I take objection to the remarks contained
and the member for Meadowlark to alleged political activity of a speaker outside this assembly, which has absolutely nothing to do with the point of privilege raised by the honourable member from Mill Woods. I think that was an inappropriate comment, and I think should be noted that that it was inappropriate. Certainly the circumstances which have been alluded to by the honourable member for Mill Woods should be taken into consideration in that context alone.
Chair has listened to the representations of the honourable member for Edmonton Mill Woods and also those by the honourable member for Edmonton Meadowlark. The chair has also listened to the honourable government House Leader. This is a very, I would characterize it as a very distasteful matter that the chair has to deal with today. And I think and the chair is also the opinion that the honourable member for Edmonton Meadowlark has not made it any less distasteful at all. And the chair would say that the point referenced by the honourable government House Leader is certainly correct, and it has nothing whatever to do with the point raised by the honourable member for Edmonton Mill Woods. The honourable member for Edmonton Mill Woods has raised a point of privilege with respect to Mr. Speaker's decision yesterday not to recognize the member during question period. Proper notice was given and the matter was raised at the earliest opportunity. In the member's notice to the chair, he quotes Beauchesne 75 in support of his point, which deals with the absolute privilege of freedom of speech in this chamber. The chair would observe that the member for Edmonton Mill Woods has otherwise than in question period yesterday been recognized by the chair, whether in assembly or in committee, throughout the proceedings of the assembly and committee of supply. The chair recognizes the privilege of freedom of speech, and of course that is the basic reason for having a set of standing orders supplemented by convention and rulings contained in Beauchesne and Erskine May and other important writings on the subject. But it also has to be pointed out that that privilege of freedom of speech does not extend and guarantee the member or any member the floor at any particular time. The chair would refer all honorable members to Beauchesne number 77, which may be of more relevance in the case at hand. It reads, freedom of speech does not mean that members have an unlimited or unrestrained right to speak on every issue. The rules of the House impose limits on the participation of members, and it is the duty of the Speaker to restrain those who abuse the rules. The rule was against unparliamentary language, Mr. Leader of the Official Opposition. There is a rule in this chamber that members are not to use unparliamentary language. On May the 9th, the Speaker ruled that language was objectionable. He also said that at that time he was not insisting on the honourable member to withdraw, although he suggested that it was unparliamentary and certainly gave the suggestion by giving the opportunity to the honourable member that he could withdraw. Erskine May, at page 180, summarizes the well-known power of the Speaker to determine the speaking order of members and to decide who shall be recognized. Specifically, it reads, "He," meaning Mr. Speaker, "calls upon members to speak, a choice which is not open to dispute. And it is common practice that a Speaker may choose not to see a member if the member's conduct has been called into question. This is the practice in the House of Commons and elsewhere, and is referred to in Beauchesne 192, which reads, "From time to time, speakers have resorted to other methods to discharge their duty to maintain order in the House. On several occasions, speakers have refused to hear members who have, in the opinion of the chair, exceeded the bounds of orderly conduct." The other matters the member raised in his notice are not relevant to the purported point of privilege and are essentially a complaint about the interpretation of the May 9th ruling of the chair. While the member also complains that the Speaker did not offer an explanation or cite the authority relating to the chair's decision not to recognize the member for Edmonton Mill Woods, on reading Hansard of May 17th, it can be seen the reasons were provided by the chair as required by Standing Order 13.2. The member's dissatisfaction with the chair's explanation does not constitute a matter of privilege. The chair therefore finds that there is no prima facie case of privilege in this matter. But in addition, honorable members, the chair would like to say and remind all honorable members that this institution is the most visible and obvious example of what we have received from Westminster in the area of the British parliamentary model. And the British parliamentary model does not require the use of blunt instruments. That is the great strength and perfection of the British parliamentary model, that blunt instruments should not have to be required. And it isn't a case of a speaker or the chair having to lead members by the hand and tell them what they can do and can't do all the time. There should be some sensitivity on all honorable members of what the decent and proper thing is to do in order to get the business of this assembly done. And that certainly when the chair gives an indication that the chair is not happy, all honorable members, whether they're on the government side or the opposition, should recognize that. And in this case, there was a clear indication that the language complained of was not proper and should not stand. And it is not up to the chair to be required to use the blunt instrument of directing an honorable member to withdraw on the pain of being named. Surely we don't have to go through that procedure. But in this connection, in this context, the chair would also like to refer honorable members to an incident in the House of Commons. And we don't have to discuss this, but this can be dealt with in the next ensuing days, maybe over the long weekend. The chair would refer members to Hansard for the dates of October 29th, 30th, and November and 18th of 1987. On October 29th, pages 10,532 to 34, 10,541 to 46. And on October 30th, 1987, 10,583 to 84. And on November 18th, 10,927 and 28. And I think all members would find that reading very useful for the future conduct of affairs in this chamber. Orders of the day.
Committee is supplied.